Hey, Screen Junkies. I am assuming you have all seen Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald. And you know why, first of all, that I'm pronouncing it that way. And second of all, you are ready to talk about full spoilers because that's what we're about to do right here. We're going to do a breakdown on the twists and the reveals and the timelines and also the good and bad of the movie in total. I'm Roth Cornet. That's Spencer Gilbert.
Yes.
We have the expert, the wonderful, the extraordinary Keeley Flaherty with us. Yay!
That build up.
She has done a couple of pieces that are awesome, talking about some of the key events in this film for fandom.com. We will have links in the description. You should definitely go check those out. But we're going to talk about these big twists and what all of the fans, I think, are going to be honing in on after having seen the film right now. So that's your warning. Last warning. Here we go. Credence Barebone is actually Aurelius Dumbledore.
Maybe, but yeah.
Maybe,
allegedly.
but like allegedly.
Possibly.
Like easily Grindelwald could have been lying to him.
Sure.
But let's presume that he wasn't lying for the moment and track down there and see how confusing this timeline gets if that were true. First of all, I walked out of the movie thinking it was definitively said that Aurelius was Albus's brother, but now we're not sure if that's true.
It was heavily implied, but it was not explicitly stated. I feel like they still have some room to backpedal if they want to backpedal, but the wording really heavily implied that Aurelius is Albus's Dumbledore, and then by proxy, Aberforth's brother too.
Yeah.
But I do think they have some backpedaling room. What did you guys
Yeah, they
think?
also have some age discrepancies,
Yes.
I
Well,
imagine.
Well, the timeline is...
Credence is playing a teenager?
Yeah, the timeline is bonkers.
Not that that can't happen, but that would probably rule out Mom, who's dead.
Yeah.
Been dead for a while.
Yeah.
I think.
So-
and the dad is in
Well,
Azkaban.
the Dumbledore family history is
Rife with tragedy.
rife with tragedy.
Yes.
Like Albus's family, he has two known siblings. He has his brother Aberforth and his sister Ariana. Aberforth, we know, outlives Albus in the books and in the movies because he fights at the Battle of Hogwarts. And as we know, Albus Dumbledore dies before that. And then Ariana was really, really, really tragically killed in a duel between Albus, Grindelwald, and Aberforth when she was 14. And that was in the year...
It was
1899. She was 14.
And he would have been 19.
He would have been 19.
Right, which is
It gets
roughly
so confusing.
roughly what we think Ezra Miller's Credence, aka Aurelius, is around 1920. We're guessing. It's not clear. His age isn't stated in the movie. But let's talk about that because Ariana... Okay. Fan theory time.
Fan theory time.
And this has been going around. Ariana had been attacked by some muggles. Her magic went out of control. She tragically accidentally killed her mother.
Well, when she was attacked by these muggles, it set into motion this really, really horrible strain of events over the next, 10 or so years. I don't know how old she was when she was attacked. Do we know how old she was when she was attacked? She was young.
No.
Regardless. So she's attacked by these muggle boys. Her magic is altered. It's never defined as an obscurus.
But it sounds like it is.
It's exactly what it sounds like. It's unpredictable. Everyone's afraid of it. And Kendra, her mother, has to devote her whole life to taking care of Ariana from that point on. She moves her entire family to Godric's Hollow because she wants to keep her unseen. Albus and Aberforth aren't allowed to talk about her publicly. It's very, very, very dark.
And she accidentally kills her mother.
And she accidentally kills her mother because she has an outburst of magic. Her father, after his daughter is attacked, after Ariana is attacked, he goes and tries to exact revenge on the Muggle boys who attacked her, and it lands him in Azkaban, where he dies. That's all we know.
Allegedly, or he has a kid with a Dementor or whatever. But is the prevailing theory that the Obscurial becomes Credence?
So
that's what's really complicated.
Which makes him technically his brother?
We have more things to unpack.
Sister brother? Obscurial?
Yeah.
Obscurial.
It's very obscure.
It's only movie 2. It's way too early to be this confused, but
crazy.
Go ahead.
Well, okay. So first of all, barring the idea that Credence is half Dementor and that he had him in Azkaban. So let's track this. So Ariana, first of all, the interesting thing to me about the attack by the Muggle boys is what it also sets into motion is that Dumbledore is more inclined to listen to Grindelwald's theories and more inclined to be open to the idea of how dangerous Muggles are and that we as the wizards are more equipped to sort of lead and have dominion over them. Of course, he later regrets that and completely changes his tune because he's not a psychotic killer. But Grindelwald, that's what leads him to Grindelwald. The duel between the two brothers in Grindelwald kills Ariana. They don't know which one of them struck the killing blow. It's something that he maybe is suppressing. And then this is where the theory comes in about Ezra Miller character. Miller character is that the Obscurial somehow survived.
That Ariana died, but we see in the first movie, in the first Fantastic Beasts, that's when we're introduced to the Obscurus. So this is really confusing. The Obscurus is the actual magical entity that we see Credence turn into. It's like that weird big cloud of magic. The Obscurial is the term used to refer to the magical person who's infected.
Okay.
So the Obscurial dies, but the Obscurus survives.
Because it was still just floating there in a bubble, right?
Well, we see that in the first one. It's not Ariana's.
Yeah.
It's something that Newt has captured because he's been traveling the world, like trying to figure out different magical beasts. And he has it, and he says it's harmless and it can't attach to. He has it encased in magic because usually the Obscurus dies after the Obscurial dies.
Yeah.
So when the kid dies, the magic dies. But in this case, he managed to encase one in magic. So the timeline is super weird because even if Ariana's Obscurus survived
And
her
somehow
death,
became
Credence, he would have to be at least 27 or 28 years old because she died in 1899 and the movie takes place in 1927.
And it's very hard to believe that Dumbledore, as we know him, would have understood that that was his reincarnated sister brother,
right,
demon, Obscurius, and send him unobserved and unaided to the United States to be raised by a really abusive human. That doesn't track at all.
Not at all.
Well, except for the fact that now between Newt and Credence and Harry Potter, we know that Dumbledore likes to just constantly spy on troubled young boys. Like, if there's a troubled young boy in the magic universe, Dumbledore is watching you.
Yeah.
He just, as a side project.
Well, let's talk about, okay, so let's finish, but let's button up the questions we have about this and then talk about, do we like the reveal and do we like that is a good question, the portrayal of Dumbledore in this movie. So the final questions that we have is okay, pretend he is a Dumbledore. Maybe he's not Dumbledore's brother.
Maybe not. Maybe he's somehow Aberforth had a kid and it's his nephew. Maybe, somehow.
Coincidentally, maybe it's in the bloodline that you're more prone to potentially develop an Obscurus and that he's so powerful that it lived.
It's entirely possible. We also know
or
that
he's lying.
Or he's lying. So he also has the other possibility that I'm sure fans will talk about is that they had an unmarried aunt, Honoria. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. But she didn't have any children that we know of. So that's the other part where it's maybe something's going on with her. Maybe she had a kid at some point. But I think that to Spencer's point, it makes much more sense that Grindelwald is just lying and he's not in any way related to Dumbledore, but he is an Obscurus, and it still could track that Ariana was an Obscurial who was infected by an Obscurus. So he's taken this poor boy, who's infected by an Obscurus, the same magical affliction that Ariana had, and he can present this, kid in front of Dumbledore
and mess with his head.
Trained him to be I'm your brother, and then it's going to completely destroy Dumbledore emotionally.
And this is what people will bring up too. Oh, what about the Phoenix? Well, it was first of all, and I don't know and answer this if you guys know. For me, it was the bird that he had didn't turn into a Phoenix until Grindelwald was with him.
Yeah,
he could have cast a spell.
Didn't he do the flourish or whatever to make it?
Yeah. So it's unclear how, and also I'm sure that though Dumbledores are more likely to have a Phoenix, they're not exclusive to them, to that one family. So there's a lot of questions and a lot of theories about this. But the main question I have for you guys is, all of that aside, did the twist even work for you?
Not really to me, because and I think Star Wars is kind of the same way too. I didn't think that Harry Potter was the world where you have the magical last name so that you're just as strong. It's not you have that Skywalker DNA. It just kind of didn't land for me because, like Credence himself, I know nothing about this kid. He's like a sentient My Chemical Romance lyric to me. He's just moping and he's who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? You're Dumbledore. End. there wasn't enough for me to get attached to him aside from like, oh, this poor kid, to the point where that reveal really hit home on a character level for me.
I thought he was developed with more pathos in the first movie because it was this person that was, I feel like there was a really good metaphor there for any parent who either inadvertently or through malice suppresses a part of their child's very nature to the point that it just becomes destructive to them and to those around them. Like I actually thought that worked as kind of a metaphor for things that we see in reality. In this movie, he became the human MacGuffin a little bit.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. And the Obscurus is like, it's definitely that. It's definitely emblematic of trying to suppress your own power. It didn't work for me at all, honestly. I think that the mass reaction from fans and even us talking about it separately has been like, what? Like when it happened, everyone's like, did he just, and it's not even clear if he said that it's his brother or not. Like we don't even know how he's related. So you walk out and you're like, okay, I know that Dumbledore hasn't been mentioned before. Did he say he was his brother? I think he said he was his brother. How is it even possible? And if he's not his brother, it just wasn't
They
satisfying.
just kept mentioning siblings
It was not
so
satisfying.
much.
Dumbledore has a brother and he's a bartender. Like, so what that he's his brother?
Like, that was great. When we met Aberforth,
Yeah.
that was powerful because we had so much context for who Dumbledore was, Albus Dumbledore, and then we got to see that he has this, like, bartender brother who, like, hates him, and that's really interesting.
Well, and he hates him because of this duel. He hates him because he feels like Dumbledore failed to take care of their sister. They blame each other for the death of their sister.
But honestly,
if she's dead.
That's enough. Like, that's plenty. That's the really interesting thing about Dumbledore. So, like, why do we have to bring this unknown brother into it? Why are we messing with already what works in the canon so well, this beloved character? Like, we don't need it. We can do a million other twists if we're building out this whole other part of the Harry Potter universe.
Well, let's talk about the beefcake that is our young Dumbledore, Jude Law, and what we think about. So I am torn because I really, really love Jude Law. I loved seeing Hogwarts and Dumbledore again. I think I've admitted and confessed to everyone on this team that I have come to realize that I have a problem, and this is the problem. I am not objective about this franchise. I am so taken by this world and by the whimsy. I so want to be in it. I so want to visit it, that it's like my cat in a way where I'm like, you just took the most perfect shit ever. And so like nothing she does is wrong ever. And so I have trouble kind of
Toxoplasmosis.
I have trouble like unraveling sort of structural issues with a movie versus how much I just love being in this world and the moments that really worked for me. So I liked seeing him as Dumbledore, but I will say that if you see a Dumbledore this much younger and not Merlin-like, when he's doing similar actions and kind of machinations and kind of the whisper campaigns that he does to drive things in the direction he wants without fully telling people what he's doing, he now reads, and forgive me if you guys think I'm wrong, as a little manipulative versus the wise mastermind who is benevolent. What did you think?
Part of me wishes that this whole series took place, 20 years earlier, because when we meet Dumbledore, he already is who he'll be for the rest of his life, more or less. If you want to see the more interesting struggle inside of him, which maybe we will.
It's with Grindelwald.
It's with Grindelwald.
Yeah.
It's with Grindelwald when
and
he's
he's
young.
going to the wrong path.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is the most fascinating part of the story.
But he's already the greatest wizard in the world at
Yeah.
this point. He's already a teacher at Hogwarts. Like, look, I actually really liked Jude Law's portrayal of him.
Me too.
I thought he nailed it.
I thought he did too.
I thought there weren't enough of those scenes.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're looking for character development, it's all in his past.
I love Dumbledore, and I liked Jude Law's portrayal too, but I'm with you. So what I think was missing for me was, if we're going to see a younger Dumbledore, I want to see him on the path to becoming the one that I know.
Absolutely.
I don't want him to just be the younger version of the one that I know. And the most fascinating untold story in those books for me is that relationship, Dumbledore and Grindelwald, and the idea that this person that we know to be almost godlike in his wisdom and grace, although he did kind of raise Harry as a pig to slaughter, that aside.
And Newt and Credence. It's his thing.
Yeah.
I just mean in the sense that he knew Harry had to die the whole time.
Well, I think the point you're making is absolutely correct. I think that this, instead of doing 5 huge budget films about this new character who we've only ever known as an author, it should have been like a series of anthology films. Like, how much would you love to watch one standalone movie about Dumbledore?
Oh my God.
Like the point of, meeting and falling in love with Grindelwald, assumedly falling in love with Grindelwald. It's technically not confirmed yet.
Yeah.
Up until, when he becomes that sage-like Merlin person and you see the moment where it happens.
I'm down for that.
I
I'm
am
also
so
down
down
for
for that.
a Newt Scamander trilogy. But it's not. He's he's just your tour guide to all these greater things that are happening around him.
And we are still so excited. The only thing that excites me about these movies anymore is when we get references to the original canon. Like when they panned over Hogwarts in the first trailer for this, I was like, I'm in.
Well, see,
like,
I
I'm
disagree
this.
slightly because I really like I like the Fantastic Beasts. I like Where to Find Them. I think Newt is actually a really good protagonist and a really interesting, compassionate character. At least he grew on me in this movie more so than the first one. And I would want to watch him and Jacob and Queenie and that core four from the first movie just have their own story.
But
they don't. It's 3 or 4 different movies. It's like Babel or Traffic or one of those, or like Requiem for a Dream or Magnolia, where there's like all these different side things going on, but it never coalesces because it's not there's like 3 separate and distinct plot lines going on at the same time. And I know it's movie 2 of 5. But it felt like movie 2 of 5. It did not feel like it had its own story.
I agree.
Well, I feel like the one arc that I really saw was for Newt. And I think that they were leaning far more into the things in this movie that make Newt feel like an outsider and make him feel separate than other. There were like weird vignettes with the beasts. I liked the murder cat.
The murder cat
quite
is
a bit.
so wonderful.
Yeah, but it was like, we forgot what movie we were in. Like with the kelp dragon thing.
Yeah.
He's like, pause the movie. I'm going to go take a cool dragon ride, and then we're back.
And the assistant who never came back.
And she disappears.
Bunty?
Yeah, Bunty was cut.
Well, we were wondering,
Bunty was
does she live in the case?
I'm
unclear.
And is she in love with him? Because I definitely get vibes that she
Yeah.
was like really into his wet shirt scene,
Yes.
which like, weren't we all?
I got vibes that it was going to be like a love triangle situation.
Absolutely.
But Newt's arc for me, and I think what J.K. Rowling, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, was the idea that you not choosing a side is not always possible, that the idea of remaining neutral is a worthy idea because it means that I kind of feel similarly. Like a lot of times I'm like, I don't really want to choose a side because that means that we're in opposition. There's no other way to be than in opposition the minute you choose a side.
Yeah.
There's no other, there has to be a third path, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes when they're Nazis, you have to choose a
Well,
side.
yeah, I mean, neutrality
Yeah.
or not getting involved is a choice just as much as choosing a side is.
Sure.
Which
Yeah, and
I
that was
thought
his
that
arc.
the movie did dramatize that. I just wish that's what the movie was about, and I wish we just had more time before we got to the big world-ending crises. Like Harry Potter, I know it's a different set of movies, but it wasn't until the 4th film that like we had a sense of like the whole world's at stake. I mean, it was rumored, but it wasn't dramatized. Like this was the whole entire cities are on the verge of destruction from the first film in this one. And it's like, let us get to know and love these characters. Let us go on, have some wonder and some whimsy and find some fantastic beasts.
Yeah.
And then the 10-15% at the end can be dedicated to Grindelwald.
But I think it's also important that we had
I have a question about Grindelwald.
We had the books as sources for the first, slew of movies. And these feel like books that were never released that are being adapted, so we don't have the context to fill in these holes. And it feels like a series of twists built on twist built on twist. So it's like, it's really cool that Nagini ended up being a human being at one point, and that's like a crazy cool twist. But also, she has no character development in this movie, really. Like, she cares for Credence, and that's pretty much it. And we don't see any of her background. And we do still have 3 more movies, but that big reveal is not satiating in the way that Credence's identity isn't satiating because we don't have the context for it, really.
Yeah, and not like I want to rewatch Chamber of Secrets very often, but it's like now Harry Potter's stabbing that poor girl in the brain.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, no, he's cutting off her head in when does Nagini get beheaded?
You're
Deathly
right.
Hallows Part
In
2.
Deathly Hallows Part 2, but isn't that her in the basilisk?
No, the basilisk isn't Nagini.
No, that's been...
Nagini is Voldemort's snake, his pet.
Got it.
That he's
Who's that snake?
She
Who's that
always,
snake again?
And she's okay. So Nagini is Voldemort's snake. That is also one of the Horcruxes.
Neville cuts her head off.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't. Not Harry. Neville cuts her head off. Yeah.
Okay, never mind. 2 snakes.
So a tale of 2 snakes, as you do. I do want to hone in on one question because I hear you guys. I think it's like 7 movies too, and I think that's where I get a little torn because some of those movies I like a lot.
Oh, same.
Like I really like being with Dumbledore again, and I like the idea of filling in his backstory, and I think that is a very human thing to have almost gone to the dark side, and literally the only thing that distinguishes you from the real bad guy is you made a decision. You just made the right choice. Very hard to do, very important. Let's talk about the Mirror of Erised, though, because I feel like they were having their cake and eating it too there. My interpretation was they're not willing to come out, we were more than brothers, so on and so forth. But when he's looking in the mirror, when I saw that in the trailer, I was like, oh my God, he's longing for his lost love, and he's going to have to fight his lost love. That's so powerful.
So powerful.
But now, because he was looking at the item that contained the blood the blood pact, I now think that what he was looking at was getting to that item so that he would have the ability to fight adult Grindelwald.
Oh, this is such a smart read on that.
And now I feel like that's slightly less impactful because it's just I want to get you,
Yeah, because
not I want to get with you.
It's not just young Grindelwald. It turns into Johnny Depp, and like he doesn't desire. I assume he doesn't desire him still.
Yeah,
in
he
that
desires to kill him.
He wants to take him out. Yeah.
Or maybe not kill him, take him out.
Because
Right.
it was part flashback. It was like part, let's inform the viewer like what's actually going on. And then it was part, you know, we're supposed to see that he's, you know, that mirror is supposed to show you your heart's deepest desires. He's seeing Grindelwald in it. So that I
No
guess
one's
is supposed
deepest
to-
desire is adult Johnny Depp.
I would
as Grindelwald
heartily
especially.
agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Although
agree.
the skull bong, brave choice. I enjoyed that prop.
Very brave choice.
That he's basically magic vaping.
So that brings us to sort of the blood pact, because that was where I was a little disappointed, because I feel like, oh, well, now you're undercutting it if he's just over it,
Yeah.
and now just wants to take him out. If there's a real internal conflict there, that's
Well, I think
a
they
lot
want
more.
both. I think you're exactly right that they're trying to showcase both. They're like, here's why he physically can't fight him, but also here's like he's longing for him too. But it might not be romantic, but it's romantic.
Yeah.
But maybe they were together, but maybe they weren't. Like they're very much trying to have both.
What did you think of that? Were you into the idea of the?
Look, I guess it was just based on the lore I brought to the table, but yeah, when the two young boys are gazing into each other's eyes and clasping blood hands together, I was like, oh, they're
It was super
you know,
erotic.
yeah, you know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, it definitely read as a relationship, but I do see your reading could definitely fall in.
I think it did too. And then, you know, we have that enigmatic line where he's like, we were closer than brothers.
Yeah.
And I mean, to me, that reads like, we
Lovers.
bone.
Yeah.
Like, but they never explicitly say it. And I think that maybe that will come out in the next 3 movies. And we also have to remember that this ends in them dueling in 1945.
Which we have now
18 years
to get
18
to. Come on.
years we have to
on.
get like
That's a
they
jump.
have it's gonna take them 18
18
years to destroy
years.
this little piece of jewelry.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Like, what is going to happen in those years that is going
It's
to...
the friends we made along the way.
Oh,
That's
is
what
that-
mattered.
And I just there's always some sort of problematic antique jewelry in Harry Potter, and it drives me
Oh, yeah.
crazy. I'm like, let's just stop with the jewelry.
Oh, no, there's more jewelry to come
Yeah.
now.
Oh my god.
I want to talk about divination real quick.
Oh, okay.
Because, and I think you guys tried to explain, like, here's the thing. I didn't know that we could, like, hollow project divination, where, so Grindelwald is a seer, and
He shows us World War II.
This is your it's your skull bong. This
Yeah,
is
he
your
hits
jam,
the skull
Spencer.
bong and he blows out a cloud that plays, I assume, the Holocaust and World War II
Yeah.
and nuclear warheads, which is, I mean, first of all, what's happening?
Well, we
What
need
is
to
it?
see it again because there is something inscribed on that skull that I think is going to be super informative at some point. It's someone's skull. There's something specific about that skull that's lending him some sort of power.
But
And
also
we do
just
know he is a seer.
Stay out of the Holocaust, Harry Potter.
know.
That's not where we need to go with this. And it's also putting us in the weird position of like, oh, so Grindelwald would have prevented it. So the good wizards are fighting to make sure World War II happens.
it becomes a little bit problematic, right? Because if that question arises, and then it's also, and I think that what J.K. Rowling was trying to do, and let's talk about it, her as a writer versus a screenwriter. I think what she was trying to do was make some analogies to the idea that, like, there can be a very charismatic leader who presents a really strong case for doing something that you would think is right. And I think she tried to do this with Queenie as well. But they can still be bad in total for all of us and as a leader. And I think that's what she was trying to do there, but it gets muddled very, very quickly. One, because you're right. Like, so if we stop him, we're making sure World War II happens.
Right.
And then two is like, he was already a murderer. He was already out there clearly against Muggles and clearly wanting to kill Muggles. And if we didn't already know that, you could sort of present, I think that's a fascinating story to tell. But he's already wanted, so I'm unclear how the law is after him, but says you can. It's like as if you were like, you have every right to go listen to Charles Manson publicly, but we are going to arrest him. It's like,
But
what?
he's already killed Sharon
he's already
Tate.
killed so many
He's already
people.
killed so many people. Like,
So why are you hearing him out?
right. It doesn't like those. It gets very muddled because I think she's trying to present this idea of like, yes, we have to have free speech, but it's like, but he's a wanted murderer.
She set
Yeah.
the story too late in the game for when the interesting things were happening. It was
Yeah.
Grindelwald's rise, it was Dumbledore and his falling out, but it's already kind of the developments happened, and now we're just watching the pieces fall into place.
Yeah, it just feels like she's using the exact same plot points that she used in Harry Potter. Now we have the Blood Pact, which is a Horcrux. Now we have the Voldemort-like figure we know actually inspired Voldemort. And they're both, Salazar Slytherin fanboys. It just feels like a repetition. And I think maybe using World War II as some sort of sticking point that makes it feel different. I don't know the logic behind it. It's very, very strange, and I think you're right, Spencer. It does put us in a peculiar position where we're rooting for people to make sure World War II happens.
It's really tricky because I thought that was actually one of the more interesting scenes.
And I guess the visual of it, I was like, this is the only thing that I've seen so far that would make me understand and somewhat commiserate with people
Following him.
Yeah,
Sure.
because at
Yeah.
that point I was like, yeah, he's like charismatic, I guess, but at the same time,
Is
why is
he?
Queenie Queenie's whole what is going to make her
she
drop
is-
everything?
Yeah, I
and
understand
follow
she
him?
was presented as kind of a naive character in the first one, but she is titanically stupid for joining him based on what she knows about him.
Well, I think
it just
that-
didn't track. Like, she wants to marry Jacob. That's great. This is a guy who's talking about turning Muggles into beasts of burden. You're not going to get what you want unless she's charmed or
Yeah.
something.
It was so weak, and it's really that actually frustrated me more than any of the other twists was Queenie's character development or lack thereof. Because in the first movie, she's one of the best parts of the first movie. Allison is so charming. She's so in her body. She's a great actor. That character is so refreshing. She falls in love with Jacob, even though she could clearly have like any person that she wanted in the wizarding
Yeah.
world. And she was really compelling. And
Who
that they-
wouldn't fall in love with Jacob,
Who
though?
wouldn't? He's
a
great.
delight.
Who wouldn't fall in love
Yeah.
with both of them?
Yeah.
So this just felt like
Is it weird to ship them both at once?
I do ship them both at once. I ship them.
I like ship them for me, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
I
okay.
agree. But it's like, it just felt like they had to break them up somehow to create some sort of conflict because they were so appealing together and they were such a great couple. And it was like, well, maybe we just make Queenie follow Grindelwald and we make her the new villain, the new divisive villain. But like, why? Because she
wants to marry.
Because she wants to get married to Jacob? Like,
Yeah.
they were having a conversation about that anyway.
But where I think where you're right and where it gets unclear is, again, I think that J.K. Rowling has these really great ideas, and in a book you can flesh out those ideas, and particularly in a book that's following one character for 7 books. But in this case, these are a lot of ideas packed into one shortish movie with not a lot of exploration. So it's like for Queenie, that the moment for me too, then I thought it was a strong moment in the film that I was like, oh, I can understand people following him. This is a really good case point that he's making. Like, I want to stop this is a reason to follow him, but really he's got these other motivations and he's not revealing them. But the problem is the other motivations have already been revealed.
Yeah, it's too late.
It's too late for that because Queenie would know and everyone would know that he hates Muggles.
She also can read minds.
Yes.
So, like, isn't she in the parlor with
Yeah.
him? He can't filter his thoughts that easily,
I mean, the same
can
way you
he?
were asking about divination and Queenie, it's like I give him Grindelwald and Dumbledore a pass. It's like they're super magic. Like they're so good at magic that the same rules don't really apply to them. Like
Interesting.
they're the greatest wizards living, so they know things that other people don't and can, they're Magneto and Professor X.
Which brings me to they are, and they should be. They should be that. They should be people that had a similar idea but followed different tracks because, frankly, Dumbledore is not about getting involved with Muggles at all. So this is the thing. If he somehow is either has her under an Imperious curse or they said you're very persuasive and took his tongue. If he somehow has some magical gift of persuasion that all he really has to do is talk to people and he can convince them if they are even slightly veering or weakened, if they are in a weakened state, then I get it. That's the only explanation, and maybe that's to be revealed. That makes sense to me about this
I just
twist.
don't think it is. Like, I think that would make more sense than what's going on in this movie. I just think that there are a lot of like half-baked twists in figuring out how to advance the plot in the name of the next 3 movies. I think that would probably make a lot of sense, but I can't foresee that happening.
I mean, speaking
see.
Speaking of tongues and Grindelwald, like, what's going on with the accent? Isn't he from? He was raised in Durmstrang, German guy, Austrian maybe.
Who knows?
What's Johnny Depp doing? Why are we calling him Grindelwald now if he speaks like Johnny Depp on a couple Quaaludes? No.
Well,
isn't Johnny Depp always speaking like he's on a couple Quaaludes?
Is there like a cut scene where he attempted the accent and they were just like, no, Johnny. No.
It's like when he's in Don Juan DeMarco. Have you guys seen that movie?
Yeah.
Marlon Brando asks him, he's like, you're from, he's from some part of Spain. He's like, but you speak with a Sicilian accent. He's like, well, my accent has been colored by my many travels. I feel like that's what it is, where it's like,
I guess it'd just be
everywhere.
too mustache twirling if he also had the German accent and we will purge the muggles.
and especially since they're like bringing World War II into the mix, it starts to get really complicated. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, and I keep wanting to return back to this, when I think about the film and we start unpacking it this way is when I'm like, oh, this is super problematic. But I will confess, and I judge me if you will, like, I just did. Like, I felt these moments of delight watching it. Like, I understood that these creatures were disconnected from anything that was going on in the plot, but I loved seeing them. And I was like, one of the hardest things for me to get past, besides the Queenie twist, was like, it's a lot to think that they all coincidentally landed in Paris. Why didn't they just all get called to Paris?
Yeah, it was like that movie Rat Race. Like everyone has these fun adventures, and then you're like, oh yeah, I guess they got there too. Like there's honestly a scene where Jacob just pops up out of nowhere, and I went, oh, he's here too. Okay, I guess he got a plane ticket or something.
I agree, though.
I'm sure if I watch it again, I'll find out how he got there. But
you're so right, Roth, though, that even though these things don't make sense, like watching it, you can't help but be transported back to the originals, and like these characters that come back, you're just so delighted to see. Like even when we see a McGonagall, unclear which McGonagall it is at Hogwarts, and she's in like her little Mary Poppins outfit, I was like, oh my god, there she is. Like I'm so excited that she's here.
And you see the Great Hall, and like there's some of the magics are really fun, and I know some people didn't like his fire dragon, but I thought it looked cool. I mean, there were just things that I enjoyed about it.
Of course, there's lots of parts that I liked, but I feel the same way about this movie that I did on Batman v Superman, where like there's multiple good movies in here, but they're all being played at the exact same time, and it's just a cacophony.
It's
so it's
confusing.
like just split it out, then we can sort out. And yes, I can cherry pick probably a half dozen moments that I really liked in this movie, mostly with Newt and mostly with the Fantastic Beasts and Jacob and stuff like that. But just on a storytelling perspective, it's just frustrating because like we all love this world and we all know that JK's super talented and David Yates has done great, but it's just drab and loud and dark and confusing. It's like that. I don't want any of those things from Harry Potter.
It's dark in the way that the first Harry Potter movie series didn't get dark until Goblet of Fire.
You have to earn the darkness.
There's no build up. It's so dark and gloomy. Like,
well, it was gloomy in the first film. I mean, it featured the heavy plot line was child abuse.
Yeah. But it's when
Fantastic Beasts, I mean.
Right, Fantastic Beasts, and that's
also Harry Potter.
Yeah, Harry Potter.
Also Harry Potter. Yeah, it's very Roald Dahl.
The thing is that like you also have this opportunity to create like a sense of place, like you did with Hogwarts. And for the best of me, I can't really tell apart magical New York, magical London, and magical Paris. They're just kind of these interchangeable concrete. There's some cool little tricks.
I liked the statue.
That was like one cool moment.
Very
but
cool.
when you like, I was so happy just to see Hogwarts again because like I had a sense of what's going on in there and what it felt like to be there. This just seems like the same kind of concrete cosmopolitan sameness, but with like clicking glass windows and stuff.
Well, I think that going into this, we got sort of a false sense of transition where, the new American wizarding school came out, Ilvermorny, and everyone was back on Pottermore, like taking, their house test. And then we were like,
I'm a Wumpus. Great.
Yeah, but like I think we all as fans kind of felt like, oh, we're gonna get that same feeling what you're talking about of, like, home. Like, we're gonna see a new setting, we're gonna get a new Hogwarts, and it's gonna be different, but we're gonna love it as much. And I think that this film kind of shows, it all felt very transitional, and it felt like a vehicle to get us back to Hogwarts. And I'm really happy that we're going back to Hogwarts. But at the same time, I think you're absolutely right. It's not establishing anything different. And I think the fact that we all love the series so much and are all relieved that hopefully them returning to Hogwarts at the end means that the next, at least one movie, will take place chiefly at Hogwarts, speaks to how much this franchise hasn't established the same kind of, love and loyalty that the originals did.
Well, I want to return to JK and the future of this franchise, which ostensibly right now is planned to be 5 films. But first, let's dig into some of the minutiae that you mentioned. Professor McGonagall.
Oh, yeah.
Which was one of those moments that it was like, oh. And then it was like, oh.
Once again, it's an encapsulation of the whole movie. Like, wait a minute.
So it can't be Minerva, right?
It can't be because she is younger than Newt.
Yeah.
So, and Newt and Leta are the same age. So how on earth could she have been teaching at Hogwarts when they were kids? We don't know of any other McGonagall that taught at Hogwarts. I guess it's not out of the question.
Another secret sibling.
We do, seriously. Yeah. But we do know that we know
Harry
some
Potter
about her
and
parents.
the secret siblings.
Yeah.
It's probably not her mother. I mean, who could it be?
Yeah,
it's an inherited
aunt.
title. It's like when you earn the name McGonagall, you start working there.
People have extended families, but that was one of the things that fans pulled out and said, "Wait a minute, like how are you there?"
Yeah.
And then I just wonder
there.
if that's something that they didn't think about when rereading the script, and that's something they're going to have to backpedal on, or if there is a larger plan at play, and it's really hard to tell at this point.
Or Minerva lies about her age, on Pottermore.
Well, which
is just relatable.
Yeah. Actually, that is really relatable. I want to talk about Leta's "I Love You" and also the Lestrange family in general, because this was one of the big, like the baby swapping adventure was challenging, and also the idea that Credence was supposed to be the last of this powerful family, and then we were led to believe that was. And tell me if I'm wrong, because there was a lot of movie and I've only seen it once. That was to the Lestranges, but we know that there are more Lestranges, so inherently that he can't be that.
Because the patriarch was like doing like magical cuckolding, like what was going on there?
Well, his name also Corvus, very confusingly. Corvus, Leta's baby brother, also named Corvus, he finally felt affection for something, and then because of Corvus Sr.'s philandering ways, we have this character who has taken an unbreakable vow to kill that baby. And then we find out that baby's dead, so isn't the unbreakable vow null and void now?
Place? Yeah.
We don't know. It's very confusing. But so we're led to believe that not only is Credence somehow a Dumbledore, but he was also on that ship with some random woman. Also, there are fan theories going around right now that ship was the Titanic.
No. Oh, God.
Which is not impossible. Timeline-wise, it sank in 1912. Who knows at this point?
And just if you're tired of a crying baby, why do you swap it for another baby? Just put it down somewhere.
I
grab
know.
a
It was
backup
weird.
baby?
I do feel like Leta was maybe the most interesting and somewhat sympathetic character in this movie. Like, we saw a little
because
bit
of the guilt she was
because
carrying.
of the guilt she was carrying, and because in the end she sacrifices herself.
Yeah.
But the baby swap is so not only is Credence a Dumbledore, but he's also just this random baby who Leta somehow managed to swap, and then
she found
on the Titanic.
She maybe on the Titanic found a Dumbledore. Another magical baby, switched it for
and it's like these two major magical families would both be going to America at the same time for
who happened to be connected
reason.
to families that were very, very important when we meet
on the
them.
Titanic.
On the Titanic. I think "On the Titanic" is just the subtitle for everything, because that part did. It's not that I couldn't track what was happening. I couldn't track why it was happening. Mm-hmm. It was the same way in the sense of, it's not that I couldn't track how they all found their way to Paris. I just thought a simpler thing was Dumbledore called everyone to Paris because it's an emergency.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or whatever. There's a reason you're all there that's not like a series of coincidences that we have to unpack. That's where it gets a little troubling. And this is where I want to talk about J.K. Rowling, because again, I love this
She's
world.
my queen.
I love her.
I love her so much. And
I worship her.
I would forgive her for literally anything. She could murder me,
I
and I would be like, "Thank you."
I would take a bullet for her.
I would too. I love her.
I do too.
love her work. And I think that's why.
It's going a little far.
You think it's too much?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm obviously lying.
I know.
down,
It's so true.
I'm obviously lying. I wouldn't take a bullet for her. Well, I don't know. I like to think that there are people. Okay, let's just not talk about taking a bullet.
Yeah, no, truly.
But let's get back to JK and the fact that I really think and this is something that we talked about the other day with creators in terms of them getting so powerful. She created a world that's beyond her now. She doesn't own it anymore. It's too big. If you look at Marvel and if you look at Star Wars, there's teams working on managing that continuity. There are story teams and that timeline. No one person could possibly do this all on their own. That's one thing. And the other thing is, like, you need help. We all need help when we're not expert in certain areas, even if we're brilliant, even if we're creative. She needs someone to help her. She needs a screenwriter to help her.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Especially when there's no source material, when she hasn't written the book, and I'm sure that she's writing the book at the same time,
but as a movie.
Exactly.
And then turning it and adapting it herself. But
Yeah.
she worked with a playwright for Cursed Child. Maybe that experience soured her on it. But if not a screenwriter, just some notes.
But also, we have to remember the Cursed Child is 2 parts. So
Yeah.
even working with a playwright, well, I'm sure that's beneficial, and I'm sure that helped tone things down. It's still a 2-part play, and I understand that she's built this world that is so complex, but it also gets dicey when you have your fans fact-checking you.
Yeah.
Like, I think that that's where it gets dicey, and I understand that it's probably impossible for her to keep everything straight now because she's built this huge, expansive universe, but it's like you say, Roth, she probably needs help.
Well, that's a problem. I think she can keep it straight, but I think she's taking.
Do you think she can keep it straight?
Well, more or less. But I think that she's taking for granted that fans aren't along on this journey with her. We haven't read these non-existent books that would fill in all the gaps, like you're saying.
But I don't know if she can keep it straight, or if she's. I don't know that anyone can keep it straight. Like, I don't think it's her.
Without help. Because the truth is, and I think she said, I'm not really good at, like, dates and those types of things.
Which is
and
fine.
timeline, which is fine. Like, that doesn't have to be, you're good at so many other things. Like, that doesn't have to be your thing, but then you need help. And it's like, for me, I feel like she wasn't just writing one book. She was writing maybe a 3-arc series or
This was supposed to be 3 initially.
Yeah, or 3 separate books just in this movie, like you're saying, 3 separate stories. And she's also, I think, grappling with, when she was writing Harry Potter, it was so focused on Harry, but it was also the analogies with Voldemort were completely about things that we all thought were in the past.
Yeah.
In terms of likening things to our world now. She's trying really hard to use Grindelwald to talk about things that are happening in the present. And you in the present, I think, are still struggling to understand what it means in context.
That's such a good point.
That's fine, but make it a Grindelwald versus Dumbledore movie.
Yeah.
Instead, we're with Newt Scamander, who, like, I'm liking more and more, and yet is less and less consequential to the story.
Yeah,
He's
and I
a
think-
very passive observer of all of it until the very end.
But maybe,
and even then,
to me,
it's
that was
just-
his arc.
Yeah, exactly. But like,
so often, what makes Harry Potter so great is that it tackles these big political narratives that become about, the complex battle between right and wrong by tackling it in an intimate, character-based way. And I think that you're absolutely right that she's tackling these big political issues, and she's very politically vocal, and I think that that's fantastic in the here and now. But at the same time, it's impossible to get any sort of objectivity when you're in it, and that's probably as hard for her as it is for the viewer.
Yeah, I think let's talk about the series going forward.
Yes.
The reviews are out. They are mixed to not super enthused. I don't know what the audience reaction is going to be. I'm sort of fascinated to see. I've seen a lot of different reactions online. Some people saying, I loved it. I had such a good time with it. And I'll be honest, I'm probably the one person here that can understand that.
No,
in
I
the
can
sense
too.
of like,
I definitely can too.
I walked out of it and I was so happy to be in that world. And I was I so love it. And then I started to talk about the movie with people and I was like, oh no, there's like problems here. And they're pretty significant in terms of, so going forward, we're supposed to get 3 more films. What do you think is actually going to happen? Will Warner Brothers adjust? Largely, that'll depend on the box office, of course. Will they bring in a different screenwriter? Like, what do you foresee happening?
I think it depends entirely on how this does in the box office. I mean, I think that if it continues to make money with what they're doing, they'll just continue what they're doing because it's obviously working on some scale and fans are still responding to it. And at the end of the day, that is the most important thing. Like, we can sit here and talk about timeline discrepancies and, you know, things of that nature, but if fans are still excited about it and they're still going and they want more, then it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, then they should just keep doing that.
Yes and no, because I think we're all fans at this table, and I think that you only get so many swings before you lose casual fans and you lose like a vaguely uninterested audience who doesn't want to do the homework before. And this is a very homework intensive movie. My screening started, I don't know if this will be in front of everyone, with Eddie Redmayne and Jude Law being like, you know, this is a very complicated movie, and it actually does tie in many interesting ways to the original Harry Potter, so we made a great featurette to explain how this ties into that. I was like, oh boy, okay. So, like, no one wants to do homework for these things.
Yeah.
Like, we do, but that's a general audience. You only have so many chances with them before they're like, I'm lost, I don't know.
I will say that the first person that I really talked to was a friend of mine who likes Harry Potter, has seen the movies, but isn't super into it. And he just said, I'm completely lost. I don't know what happened. Can you explain some things to me?
You're
and I was like, oh,
not
Yeah.
really.
that's going to be tricky.
But look, the second Harry Potter movie was the worst one, I think.
I agree.
In my opinion.
Yeah,
And then the third was the
objectively.
best.
Yeah, I
object-
agree with that completely. Azkaban is the best for sure.
We were talking about that today. Yeah, Azkaban, I think, is all of our favorites. Other people have different favorites, but the point is the second one was the decline,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then it went way up. So we'll see. That might be the same. They may have time to sort of adjust. They adjusted there.
And they
in
have set it
terms
up
of-
for an upward trajectory just with the Hogwarts setting alone.
Yeah. So we'll see where they go from here. Also, the other interesting thing financially is that generally speaking, if audiences don't like this one, it's the next one that's going to feel the hit. So this one will be based on how much they liked Fantastic Beasts. The next one, in terms of especially opening weekend, will be based on how much they liked and have faith in this one. So we'll see where it goes from there. We have gotten into all the things for a very long time.
I
If
don't
you're
know.
still with
Who
us,
was the lady in the
goodness.
book with not Ollivander? What's his
That
name?
was Jessica Williams.
That was Jessica Williams.
Yeah, but who?
We don't
But
know her
I don't
character.
understand what that was about.
And it was Flamel, right? That's
It was
the guy
Nicholas Flamel.
who
We
created the
didn't even
Sorcerer's
talk
Stone,
about
and
that.
he's
Oh my
like
God,
walking
there's so
around
much
like
to
the
unpack
Scary
here.
Movie 2 hand guy. Well, I don't know. I'm confused.
I was confused about who she was that was instructing Nicholas
Yeah.
Flamel into the fight.
We know that they are friends in
J.K.
real life.
Rowling and
JK and
Jessica
Jessica
Williams.
Williams are friends in real life. So it was probably just like a fun little cameo that she threw her because Jessica Williams is a super fan. I don't know what the context is or who that character was necessarily, but
There you
Who
go.
knows?
Who knows? If
it's
you
the
guys,
pre-order of the Phoenix.
yeah. If you guys know, let us
Please,
know in
let
the
us
comments.
know.
I'm sure we did miss things. You're right. There's a lot going on in this movie.
So much.
Let us know if you liked it. If you didn't, thank you for sticking with us for this long. Keeley, like I said, has written a bunch of really great articles, which you can find on Fandom, which you can find in the description below. You should go check those out for sure. She unpacks a lot of the stuff that we've touched on here today. And yeah, thanks for watching this long. We've
Yeah,
talked about this
thanks.
a long time.
Yeah, let's keep it going.
Yeah, you still mad at us?
Probably.
Probably. Oh, Keeley, where can they find you?
oh, it's just my full name at Keeley Flaherty. That's it. There it is. Oh, it's right there.
I'm at Roth Cornet. That's Spencer Gilbert. And we will see you soon. Oh, Akio,
Weekend.
title card.
No.
End card.